Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Munatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Natira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Nana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Madhava Kunja Vihari Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Kishore ki Gantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Tagore Premanande Hari Hari Bol Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tatodram Adiraye Nashtapaishu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 21, Text 18. Tat prasanganubhavena Ranti devanuvartina Abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana Tat prasanganubhavena Ranti devanuvartina Abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana Tat prasanganubhavena Ranti devanuvartina Abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana. Tat prasanganubhavena Ranti devanuvartina Abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana. Tat prasanganubhavena Ranti devanuvartina Abhavan yogina sarve Narayana parayana. Word after word, word for word. Tat prasanganubhavena. Because of associating with King Rantidev, when talking with him about Bhakti Yoga. Rantideva Anuvartina. The followers of King Rantideva, that is, his servants, his family members, his friends, and others. Abhavan became Yogina, first-class mystic yogis, or bhakti yogis. Sarve, all of them. Narayana Parayana, devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All those who followed the principles of King Rantidev were totally favored by his mercy and became pure devotees, attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus they all became the best of yogis. Purport. The best yogis or mystics are the devotees. The best yogis or mystics are the devotees, as confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita 6:47. Yoginam api sarvesham matgatenantaratmana shadavan bhajate yomam sameyukta tamomataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. The best yogi is he who constantly thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of the heart. Because Rantidev was the king, the chief executive in the state, all the residents of the state became devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, by the king's transcendental association. This is the influence of a pure devotee. If there is one pure devotee, his association can create hundreds and thousands of pure devotees. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnava is meritorious in proportion to the number of devotees he has created. A Vaishnava becomes superior not simply by jugglery of words, but by the number of devotees he has created for the Lord. Here the word Ranti Devanuvartina indicates that Rantideva's officers, friends, relatives, and subjects all became first-class Vaishnavas by his association. In other words, Rantideva is confirmed herein to be a first-class devotee, or Mahabhagavata, Mahat Sevan Dvaram Ahur Vimukte. One should render service to such Mahatmas, for then one will automatically achieve the goal of liberation. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has also said, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Payeche Kepa. One cannot be liberated by his own effort, but if one becomes subordinate to a pure Vaishnava, the door to liberation is open. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine Vanchakopa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I'll try to share some things that I was meditating on from this verse for my purification as a service to the Vaishnavas. Thank you all for being here. I find this verse to be really nice, explaining the effect of associating with a pure devotee. So King Rangtidev is being described here as a first-class devotee in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, and everyone who was following him, all of his subordinates, also became pure devotees because of simply by following him, by his association. So, Srila Prabhupada said they all became, in the verse they all became yogis, and then also the term is Narayana Parayana. So yogis are devotees of Narayana. So they became the best of yogis. And Srila Prabhupada quotes the verse from the Bhagavad Gita describing who is the best yogi. The best yogi is he who always abides in me, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, and is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. So one point I could speak about is the process of yoga, which is known today in the modern culture is more just a physical regimen of exercises, and that this became prominent in like the 20th century, or when a lot of gurus came over to America from India, and then to the Western culture, to Europe and America, and then the Western culture is, of course, quite influenced by the bodily conception of life. So they took some of the asanas and pranayama, which is a very small part of yoga, and then they expanded that to be and promoted it as an exercise or health benefit. And then this process of yoga for health started expanding, and now it's really exploding at the modern times to be like a $1 billion industry. So a lot of entrepreneurs took the yoga and term yoga and turned it into this whole enterprise of exercise based on asanas and pranayama. But here we're hearing the more traditional aspect of yoga, which is to be intimately united with God, with Krishna, with the Supreme. So this is the best yogi and the best mystic, and it's describing nicely the essence of this process. This process is to subordinate ourselves to pure Vaishnavas. So it cannot be done on our own effort. Our effort is to put ourselves in a subordinate position to a pure devotee and allow the mercy that comes through the devotee to enter into our lives. So I wanted to speak about this mostly. That's mostly what I prepared for, is this concept of a relationship with a pure devotee and also with devotees in general. So I kind of have been meditating on this, so it kind of goes well with this purport. First, I want to read a nice verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 15. A nice verse explaining the importance of a spiritual master. I'll read three verses from this and connect it to this verse. So this is text 43 and 44 of Canto 7, Chapter 15. So, in the conditioned stage, one's conceptions of life are sometimes polluted by passion and ignorance, which are exhibited by attachment, hostility, greed, lamentation, illusion, fear, madness, false prestige, insults, fault-finding, deception, envy, intolerance, passion, bewilderment, hunger, and sleep. All of these are enemies. Sometimes one's conceptions are also polluted by goodness. In the next verse, as long as one has to accept a material body with its different parts and paraphernalia, which are not fully under one's control, one must have the lotus feet of his superiors, namely his spiritual master and the spiritual master's predecessors. By their mercy, one can sharpen the sword of knowledge, and with the power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's mercy, one must then conquer the enemies mentioned above. In this way, the devotee should be able to merge into his own transcendental bliss, and then he may give up his body and resume his spiritual identity. And one more verse from this section. Otherwise, if one does not take shelter of Achyuta and Baladev, then the senses, acting as the horses, and the intelligence, acting as the driver, both being prone to material contamination, inattentively bring the body, which acts as the chariot, to the path of sense gratification. When one is thus attracted again by the rogues of Vishaya, eating, sleeping, and mating, the horses and chariot driver are thrown into the blinding dark well of material existence, and one is again put into a dangerous and extremely fearful situation of repeated birth and death. So I find these verses to be a really nice meditation. Personally, I'm definitely in this category of conditioned stage where my conceptions of life are sometimes polluted, most of the time, all the time, polluted by passion and ignorance. And these enemies that are described in this verse are really nice to understand: attachment, hostility, greed, lamentation, illusion, fear, madness, false prestige, insults, fault-finding, deception, envy, intolerance, passion, bewilderment, hunger, and sleep. So, it's a nice summary of the conditioning, being conditioned by the modes of passion and ignorance and all these problems that come. Particularly for me, like I find my mind is always trying to find fault with other people, and this is a really common conditioning of the mind, and always there's so much contamination that it's like a nagging feeling. From my experience, the mind is always just like feeding these ideas. Like my summary of the mind is like always, no matter what anyone is doing, trying to like justify how the false conception of myself is better than the other person. It's like always trying to find this position of like superiority. That's just when I observing my mind, it's always doing this, like this person does this but I do this, so I'm clearly here. It's always trying to maintain this position of superiority of others. This is just kind of summarizing my observation of what's going on in my conditioned mind. And I try my best to not listen to this and fill my mind with transcendental knowledge. But like the next verse is saying like what you have to do in order to overcome this conditioning. It's that you have to have the lotus feet. You have to hold on to the lotus feet of your superiors, namely the spiritual master and the spiritual master's predecessors. In the purport of this verse, there's another verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is also really nice. 11:20:17. This human form of body is the most valuable boat, and the spiritual master is the captain. Guru Karnadharam, to guide the boat in plying across the ocean of nescience. The instruction of Krishna is a favorable breeze. One must use all these facilities to cross over the ocean of nescience. Since the spiritual master is the captain, one must serve the spiritual master very sincerely, so that by his mercy one will be able to get the mercy of the Supreme Lord. I like this verse a lot. The human form of body is like a boat, and the spiritual master is the captain of the boat. So there's like the picture of the chariot where the mind is compared to like the ropes attached to the senses, and the soul is on the back. So and you're just being driven by these wild horses of the senses and uncontrolled mind. But this description is accepting the spiritual master as the captain of your boat. So it's accepting it as the captain of your boat. That's a big deal. It's not so easy to do that, to give control of the way that you personally feel is best to guide yourself, and give that full control to the captain, to the spiritual master. This is, I find, a nice meditation in order to conquer these enemies that are described in the previous verse, giving that control to the spiritual master. I have some personal experience, and I know I've heard other stories of devotees who were planning on doing something with their lives, and then they tell their plan to the spiritual master, and then the spiritual master says something differently, and then they follow that instruction, and then like for me personally, it happened like my spiritual master told me to come here, and I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going, and then I was in New York City, and then he told me to come here, and then like shortly after that, the ashram that I was in basically collapsed, and there's so much difficulty going on in New York City that I'm extremely grateful that I followed his instruction to come here and be a part of the community and the project here. So that's one experience that I had that was like really faith building in this principle of accepting the Guru as the captain of your ship. I want to share some pretty interesting statements by Bhakti Tirtha Swami regarding this concept as well. He brings like a really interesting perspective to this, having a relationship with the spiritual master, which I find is really nice. So this is a book called Reflections, from a book called Reflections on Sacred Teachings, Volume 5, and it's Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's 64 Principles of Community. So it's a lot about like relationships and how we can interact with each other. So this is just from the introduction from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. So he speaks a lot about the importance of relationships among pure devotees, not simply focusing on our relationship with Krishna directly, or even our relationship with our spiritual master directly, and neglecting the relationship with devotees on a pure level. And he says this is really extremely important in our advancement in Krishna consciousness. So I'll read. So, it is not that sambandha or relationships are just an extracurricular part of the devotional process. They are everything. Whether we look at physics, mathematics, or just at life itself, we cannot help but see how everything is in some kind of relationship. Atoms, neutrons, protons, light waves, and all, etc., all interact with each other in unique ways. Sometimes they are repelling, and other times they are uniting. From the minutest particles to conscious life forms, relationships cannot be avoided. We are definitely not yogis striving for mystic powers, nor are we karmakandis, just engaged in fruitive activities. We are trying to give our hearts. Sometimes devotees have the conception that through mixed devotion and impersonal activities, they will suddenly go to the spiritual kingdom when they die. However, in order to go back to Krishna's abode, we have to become like that abode. In the spiritual world, the residents are constantly involved in quality relationships and interact at the highest level with the divine couple. Such qualities can be gradually developed through our relationships and current services. To the degree that our service is not based on a mindset of selflessness, devotion, unmotivated service, and a total love for all aspects of Krishna's creation, to that same degree, we are not yet qualified. Krishna does not say that he gives knowledge based on the external performances. He clearly says, Tesham satatayuktanam, bhajatam pratipurvakam, Dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Even by looking at our own society of devotees, we can gain this understanding. We have seen that devotees can be externally engaged in service for many years, but if they do not have a deep quality of devotion and love, there will not be a sense of longevity. They will not have deeper realizations and experiences, and will go on only mechanically in their devotional service. But as we understand what we read and thus practice it amongst ourselves, it will become more fixed in our mind and hearts. Krishna, who is hiding in the heart, will begin to come out and send signals as long as we do not allow our own obfuscations, I don't know what that word means, to block that connection. So I'm going to read a little bit more because it gets more relevant. We know that we all have a personal relationship with Krishna or God, and we all have a personal relationship with the spiritual master. However, we can only have a healthy relationship with the Guru when we have healthy relationships with sadhus or the devotees of the Lord. If we have healthy relationships in our daily associations, then our relationship with the spiritual master becomes genuine. Without healthy relationships among our peers, our relationship with the Guru does not go beyond hero worship. It will just be another expression of sentimentalism and even fanaticism. People naturally have the tendency to put their energy into some type of worship, but most people worship athletes, musicians, politicians, or other popular personalities with foolish adulation. However, as servants of the Lord, we do not want this type of sentimental relationship with our spiritual master or with our peers. We want to focus on the quality and the purpose of the relationship. The relationship with the disciple and the spiritual master is essential. We cannot have a clear understanding of love of God without involving ourselves in the bona fide systems and practices given by the Lord Himself. If it were so easy to develop God consciousness without the help of others, why does Krishna constantly send different representatives and teachers? If we try to succeed on the spiritual path alone, we are basically just engaged in speculation and interpolation. At the end of the day, it will leave us frustrated because it is not quite that simple. Yudhisthira Maharaj confirms this truth in the Mahabharata. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastra confirms, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajanas advocate. End of quote. Love of God is locked up in the heart of the pure devotees, and by following the path given by such unadulterated devotees, we can begin to also experience the transcendental culture. We have a wonderful chance to tune in to the real purpose of life, a wonderful chance to end relationships based on lust and understand what love really is. If we want to understand the mood of the spiritual world, we must develop healthy relationships and healthy communities among our associates in our current environments. Srila Prabhupada has given us a powerful conception of a spiritual community in which he elaborated on his essay entitled Conceptions of Giridhari, published in Bhakti Godhead magazine. Alright, I'll just finish it. In order to treat the heart diseases of the asuras, transcendental hospitals have to be opened at Giridhari, apart from the ordinary hospitals that run everywhere. These hospitals shall treat the asuric patients with respect to their education, initiation, knowledge, and transcendental science, eating, enjoying, and treatment of diseases altogether. That will be the special function of the Giridhari. If work is begun with the aim of serving the internal potency of Godhead, there will not be any check in the progressive work of the external potency of Godhead, but such work will have a change in the internal potency of Godhead. So, I read that all to, I find it's really useful insight from Bhakti Tirtha Swami about how we actually become purified and how we actually become qualified to go back to Godhead. And he's highlighting actually developing how and working on how we relate with each other on a pure level. It says that we have to make these communities here that are operating on this level of selflessness. And if we can't operate on that level here with our peers, then how can we expect to go back to the spiritual world at the end of our lives? We have to work on associating with people. It's a practice, and it's a cultivation, and it's a matter of purification that comes through associating with devotees. And all of our anarthas had to be uprooted. If we stay isolated, then we hide behind our anarthas, and it's easier, it's more peaceful that way. But it's not the process given. The process is to associate with devotees, which isn't always so easy to do when we're conditioned by all those things that I read in the verse from the 7th canto, all these difficult things that are covering our pure consciousness. Another interesting point is that healthy relationships with peers shows a healthy relationship with the spiritual master. And he mentioned the point of having like a kind of almost idolizing the spiritual master, almost like in an impersonal way. Like he compared it to like worshiping musicians or athletes. Like from a distance, you can worship the athlete. Like I remember growing up worshiping the athletes, basically, and musicians from a distance, and it's quite impersonal because you're just basically worshiping them for their good qualities, but you don't actually have a relationship with them, and you actually just kind of want to like become them, basically. So it's kind of it's not such a genuine relationship with that person as a person. And if you meet that person, you probably you have this kind of phantasmagoria about who that athlete is or musician is, and then if you actually get to spend some time with him, probably be different than what you're expecting. You may be disappointed in his character, things like that. But so he's comparing that to a relationship with the spiritual master being genuine. It's not just like idolizing him and having this picture not developing like a really deep personal relationship with the spiritual master, where the spiritual master may do things that you don't like to do. Like they may correct you and teach you. That's ultimately the purpose, and may be difficult to have a relationship with a spiritual master. You have to follow what they say. You know, we're conditioned, so it challenges our very being of being independent, conditioned souls. So from a distance, it's easy to like, oh, that my spiritual master's up there, and then we continue doing our own thing. But when you have a really personal relationship and surrender, it's not so easy to have. It calls for great commitment and sacrifice. Really, that's what personal relationships call for, is you have to sacrifice your own desires with the desires of the person that you're in a relationship with, and so that's where a lot of purification takes place, is when we have to give up our own plans or intentions, desires, and to just serve the spiritual master and serve the devotees. That's a lot of purification takes place there. I was going to say something. I've lost my train of thought a little bit. But last thing I was going to share was just a clip from the purport of the Nectar of Instruction. Just Srila Prabhupada's says, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been established to facilitate these 6 kinds of exchanges between devotees. This society was started single-handedly, but because people are coming forward and dealing with the give and take policy, the society is now expanding all over the world. The life of Krishna Consciousness Society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchanges among the members. Therefore, people must be given the chance to associate with the devotees of ISKCON, because simply by reciprocating in the 6 ways mentioned above, an ordinary man can fully revive his dormant Krishna consciousness. So, relationships and loving exchanges is the essence of Krishna consciousness, all the way from the beginning to the end. How do we preach to people? We have to develop relationships with them. That's the beginning. If we can establish a connection with people who aren't in Krishna consciousness, then they'll hear from us. They'll want to come try it out. If they trust the person and they feel a connection with the devotee that they meet, then that's the in, is by developing a relationship with the devotee. And then while we're practicing the relationships with our peers and the relationship with the spiritual master is the means of purification. And then ultimately the relationship with Krishna. So from start to finish, it's all about relationships and loving exchanges. That's devotional service. That's bhakti. That's Krishna consciousness. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on this topic. If anyone has any comments, if we can talk about this subject, but I didn't get a chance to prepare anything to speak about Ramanujacharya, which is his appearance day or disappearance day. I'm not sure which one, but if anyone wants to share something about Ramanujacharya, I would be grateful, because I didn't get a chance to prepare anything.
I don't know too much about Ramanujacharya, but maybe Subal could share afterwards. But man, you gave a really nice class. I really love your classes. And this might throw you a curveball, but I appreciate your point when you said you wanted to be superior to others. And I actually thought that was good. And because this reminds me of the same question was brought to Jesus by his disciples, Peter and John. They said, Jesus, they were proud of being disciples. How can we be distinguished? How can we be superior? So Jesus was like, he said, actually that's a good instinct. He says, if you want to be truly superior to others, then consider yourself servant first and master last. And in his speech, Drum Major Instinct, Martin Luther King, he paraphrased Jesus in his statement. He says Jesus was essentially saying, don't give up the instinct of being superior to others. Don't give up the instinct of being first. It's a good instinct if you don't distort it and pervert it. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. That's the new definition of greatness. Sarvapati virnimutam taparatvaina nirmalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchate. That verse says the same thing. If you really want to be superior to others, then you should be more concerned about sevanam bhaktir uchate, being servant first, and less concerned about these upadis. In other words, we should be more concerned about God and less concerned about glory, more concerned about people and less concerned about prestige, more concerned about love and less concerned about power. That's why Jimi Hendrix says, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. And that's what Lord Chaitanya said to Sri Rupa Goswami. Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ata Eva Shant Bhuti Muti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashant. If you really want peace, then consider yourself servant first and give up all these upadis, these desires of being the controller, and appreciate devotees, appreciate everything. Serve devotees, appreciate them, glorify them, because this world is so temporary. So my question is essentially is that you may have a problem with being superior to others in a negative sense, but I say that's no problem, because even if we are consider ourselves superior in a negative sense, then eventually the Lord will humble us like he did to Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu had the designation of king of the universe. That was described in the Bhagavatam, the title, king of the universe. So Lord Nrsimha there says, I have a better designation for you, deceased. That's your designation. You live in a mansion now, here's your house now, mausoleum. And so we can see in the material world, people are proud of being a governor, but then when they're put in jail for greed, then their new designation is someone's girlfriend when they're in prison. So we don't have to worry about being superior to others in a negative sense, because eventually the Lord will humble us. So it's better to voluntarily be humble than involuntarily be humbled by the Lord. So maybe you could expand on that, but if not, I just want to appreciate the point you were making. And if Subal has something about Ramanujacharya, I vaguely know something, but I can't really speak authoritatively. So
I don't really have much of a comment. I like your reference from the Bible about that. That's nice explanation.
Thank you for the class, Giridhari Prabhu. Very nice points. To focus your presentation on relationships, and especially reading that from Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, his thoughts was pretty powerful. The part of that the importance of relationship, the peer relationship, to actually, go deeper in a relationship with the spiritual master is pretty powerful. You can understand and think that, yes, it is the utmost important because it's the most difficult possibly, or arguably the most difficult to do. It is in relationships, the relationship in which you are extending yourself to others. When you're in that relationship with others, it's very simple. One finds yourself very comfortably doing that. When you're in the relationship of taking a superior, between you and a superior, that's simple too, because it's already established. And when there's a relationship within peers, then it becomes problematic, because then our personal interest becomes touch. In the relationship, when we extend ourselves to someone who is, that we're extending ourselves, we may have a personal motivation, which is, I want to do a service, or I want to do this, I want to bring devotees. And then there's a certain goal orientation there. There's sincerity, but it's mixed with that. When we are taking the association of someone who is superior, we want to become purified, we want to become Krishna conscious, a certain interest too. When we're peer to peer, then those interests may be challenged, because, your view is as good as my view, and that's what you were pointed out, that you find yourself seeing at your mind, thinking, oh, my view is better, or I like my view better than this view. So, and that's what creates a difficult thing. one of the difficulties I find with this is that it takes two, relationships is between two. So it is easy to say we should have a loving relationship. But when a loving relationship is in this level of peer level, and in a level in which devotion is mixed and there is personal motivations, then it becomes an exchange of two. If it's a one-way thing, or if you feel it's a one-way thing, then it becomes very difficult to achieve that loving relationship. If you follow what I'm, trying to point out, it's not easy to do. So it's very difficult. It requires quiet cultivation, and it requires going at the core of our condition, which is we have personal motivations. We have a motivation. It's not unmotivated. We require some reciprocation. We require some acceptance, all this stuff. And if we perceive in some way that we're not receiving it, then you go to your trenches, and you feel, I cannot pursue this relationship like that. And so it's true. I think one of the things that you read that Maharaj said is how can we achieve Krishna consciousness? How can we go back to Godhead if we cannot break through that one in terms of properly relating to our peers? And what kind of example we do to those who we're standing to, and also the relationship with our gurus like that. So it's quite something to ponder about, and to try to understand and apply. It's a lot of painful, hard work for that. So comment on that. So thanks for bringing that out. Quick comment on Ramanujacharya, great Acharya, Sri Sampradaya. One thing that is mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport is that the test of a great Vaishnava is how his mere association can make devotees. And Ramanujacharya basically transformed the whole South Indian continent into Vaishnavism just by his presence. And the influence of his teachings on worship and the procedures actually to worship the personality of Godhead and to establish that relationship is basically permeating the whole Vaishnava tradition, that's what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took from Ramanujacharya teachings. Both the worship of the spiritual master and the service of the devotees, and these wonderful procedures of worship, properly worship the deities, like that. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
In this purport, very nice point that Srila Prabhu also told. That means how a pure devotee is known by his association to create more devotees. That is the meritus. The merit goes how means one can make devotee. That is a very, very important point. That is in Bhagavad Gita also it is said that Krishna, likes that devotee who creates others as devotees. So, and another point to add this also, especially for spiritual masters, like when they make more devotees. Same times they have to take care of the devotees. If they cannot deliver their follower, disciples, then it's a great risk. They cannot go to Krishna even. Like there is a very nice story in Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, one Ajagara, that is Ajagara means one python, that how he was eaten by so many ants, because because he could not deliver his follower, so that's why he could not get liberation. Then those ants are the disciple of that spiritual master. They are eating his body, like that. So it's a great risk also. But moreover, if you can make a devotee in your life, that is Krishna's devotee, is great things, very, very great things. And one more about Ramanujacharya. Very nice story. There is one time that Nityananda Prabhu was telling the story very often, that how Ramanujacharya, one time he visited his disciple's house, Then his disciple is actually very poor. He was very, very poor. And he had gone outside and his wife was inside the house. But that his wife had no proper dress to come out to greet Ramanujacharya. Then Ramanujacharya gave his own cloth, threw into the house because he could understand. Then she covered her body and she came out, and she wanted to treat her guru in such a gorgeous way, at least to give prasadam, at least because his guru has come to her house. So then what to do? Then she went to a local shopkeeper, But the shopkeeper was so lusty person, he was always wanting to take advantage of this beautiful woman. But that day the opportunity came. Then the shopkeeper expressed, so I will give you groceries in a condition if you can fulfill my desire. And she said, okay, all right. If I can satisfy my guru, then I am ready. Whatever you want from my body, you want to enjoy my body, okay. So then the condition was settled. Then she got all groceries and made prasadam for her guru. Then her guru was satisfied with all this. But what happened when she went and her husband came, he found all these things. Well, where did you get all these things and how could you satisfy our guru? Then he said, this thing happened. Finally, then she went, according to her husband's permission, she went to fulfill her and to that shopkeeper's desire. But when she went, the shopkeeper's mind had changed, because his Madhacharya's, influence. Then she said, no, you are my mother. I am very indebted. I am very, sorry for, I had very bad intention. So like that, this is a very nice thing to remember. And also how Madhvacharya brought Udupi deity. That's a very nice story, but I don't think I have time. So
Ramanujacharya's appearance day today.
Yeah.
Madhvacharya.
Ramanujacharya. And he installed the deity of Udupi, that he was taking a shower in the ocean nearby, and that time one merchant, he came, he was in trouble because his ship was going to sink, but by Madhvacharya's blessing, then they could reach the seashore, and then he asked, how could I serve you to Madhvacharya? He said, well, if you want, you can give me all. You have Gopi Chandan. Then when he brought all the Gopi Chandan from his boat, then deity was found inside that Gopi Chandan. And that deity was so enchanting that he was eating, the Lord was in form of a, very childhood form. Then he was taking some butter and like that. That deity was installed in Udupi by this, and like that. So very nice stories are there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll stop here. It's past 8:30. Thank you all for your participation. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.